Thorn Blackwood, he replied, stepping closer. His heat radiated till the dim flicker of torchlight danced across the cold stone walls of the underground chamber, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of their own. Ilara Voss shivered in her thin, tattered gown, the chains around her wrists biting into her skin like icy fangs. She wasn't supposed to be here, not in this hidden world of snarls and glowing eyes, where the air reeked of musk and primal hunger. But fate, or whatever cruel twist of it, had dragged her into the depths of the Blackwood auction house. A clandestine gathering buried beneath the misty forests of Eldridge Hollow. Ilara had always known she was different, marked by the world in ways that made others turn away. The scars that marred her face and arms were souvenirs from a childhood fire that had claimed her family and left her wandering from one foster home to another. At 25, she'd thought she'd escaped the worst of it, found a quiet job in a remote library, far from prying eyes. But then came the night of the storm, when shadowy figures had burst into her cabin, their eyes gleaming unnaturally in the lightning flashes. They'd called her latent, whispered about a scent on her that didn't belong to humans. Drugged and bound, she'd woken here, labeled as a scarred Omega, whatever that meant in their twisted hierarchy. Omegas, she'd overheard from the guards, were the lowest in the shifter packs, submissive, fertile, often traded like commodities to strengthen alliances or sate Alpha's urges. But Ilara wasn't one of them. She was human, or so she'd always believed. Yet here she stood on a raised platform, the last lot in tonight's auction, her heart pounding as the crowd of shifters, men and women with predatory grace, eyed her with disinterest or outright disdain. The auctioneer, a weary man with a wolfish grin and eyes that shifted from brown to amber, slammed his gavel on the podium. Lot 13, the scarred Omega from the Outer Territories. No pack affiliation, no known lineage. Bidding starts at 5,000 silver marks. Do I hear 5? Silence hung heavy, broken only by the shuffle of feet and muffled snarls. Ilara's cheeks burned under the scrutiny. The scars pulled tight across her left cheek, a jagged map of pain that made her look fierce to some, broken to others. No one wanted damaged goods, especially not in a world where perfection meant survival. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Too weak, ugly, not worth the risk. Her breath came in shallow gasps. This couldn't be real. Just days ago, she'd been shelving books, dreaming of a life where no one noticed her. Now, she was merchandise in a supernatural bazaar, where humans like her were apparently fair game if they carried even a hint of otherness. The guards had laughed when she'd protested her humanity, injecting her with something that dulled her senses, but not her fear. For 1,000? The auctioneer prodded, his voice laced with impatience. Still nothing. Ilara's knees weakened. If no one bid, what then? She'd heard tales from the holding cells, and wanted Omegas were discarded, left to feral packs or worse. A low growl echoed from the back of the chamber, cutting through the murmurs like a blade. Heads turned as a figure emerged from the shadows, his presence commanding the room without a word. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell in wild waves to his collar and eyes like stormy seas, piercing blue, flecked with gold. His jaw was set in a hard line, and the tailored black coat he wore did little to hide the raw power coiled in his frame. Whispers spread like wildfire. The Alpha Prince, Thorn Blackwood himself. Ilara's pulse quickened. She'd caught snippets about him in the cells, the exiled heir to the largest shifter pack in the region, cursed by some ancient bloodline feud. They said he ruled from the shadows. Now, his territory, a fortress in the heart of the Whispering Woods. Why would someone like him be here? Thorn strode forward, his boots echoing on the stone floor. The crowd parted instinctively, a mix of awe and fear in their eyes. He stopped at the edge of the platform, his gaze locking onto Ilara's. For a moment, the world narrowed to just them, the scarred woman and the brooding Alpha. His nostrils flared slightly, as if scenting the air, and something flickered in his expression. Recognition? Hunger? It sent a shiver down her spine, not entirely from fear. 10,000. Thorn said, his voice a deep rumble that vibrated through the chamber. Gasps erupted. The auctioneer's eyes widened. 10,000 from Prince Blackwood. Do I hear 11? Silence again, but this time charged with tension. No one dared challenge him. Ilara stared, her mind reeling. Why her? She was nothing, a human mistake in their world. But his eyes held hers, intense and unyielding, as if he saw something no one else did. Sold to the Alpha Prince for 10,000 silver marks. The gavel cracked down, sealing her fate. Guards hauled her off the platform, unchaining her wrists but keeping a firm grip on her arms. They led her through a side door into a dimly lit corridor, where Thorn waited, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Up close, he was even more imposing, 6'4" of muscle and mystery, with a faint scar of his own tracing his jawline, hidden partially by stubble. "Leave us," he commanded the guards, who bowed and retreated without question. Alara rubbed her wrists, backing against the wall. "What do you want with me? I'm not one of you." "This is a mistake." Thorn's lips curved into a faint, humorless smile. "Mistakes don't carry the scent of destiny, little one. And you reek of it." Her heart skipped. Destiny? The word hung between them like a promise or a threat. She glanced at the door, calculating her chances of escape, but his presence filled the space, making the air thick with unspoken tension. "Who are you really?" she whispered, her voice steadier than she felt. Ardher, a contrast to the chill of the stones. "And you, Alara Voss, are now under my protection, whether you like it or not." How did he know her name? Panic surged, but beneath it, a strange pull tugged at her, a curiosity laced with something deeper, like an invisible thread drawing her in. He reached out, his fingers brushing her scarred cheek gently, almost reverently. She flinched, but didn't pull away. His touch was warm, electric, sending sparks through her skin. "You're hurt," he murmured, his voice softening for the first time. "Not just the scars. I can smell the fear, the loss." Alara swallowed hard. "You don't know anything about me." "Oh, but I will." His eyes darkened, pupils dilating slightly. "The moon is full tonight. Secrets have a way of revealing themselves under its light." Before she could respond, he turned, gesturing for her to follow. "Come. This place isn't safe for you." Reluctantly, she trailed him through winding tunnels that led upward, emerging into the night air of the forest. The trees loomed like ancient guardians, their leaves rustling in the wind. A sleek black SUV waited on a dirt path, its engine humming softly. Thorn opened the door for her, his manners at odds with the wild aura he exuded. As they drove into the darkness, Alara stole glances at him. His profile was sharp, haunted. What secrets did an alpha prince hide? And why had he paid everything for her, a scarred nobody? The pull between them grew, an undercurrent of fate she couldn't ignore, even as suspicion gnawed at her. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. In the world of shifters, bonds like theirs weren't chosen, they were forged in blood and moonlight. Unbreakable and dangerous, the SUV wound through the dense labyrinth of the whispering woods, its headlights slicing through the inky blackness like twin blades. Alara clutched the edge of her seat, her scarred fingers digging into the leather as if it could anchor her to reality. The forest outside was alive, branches creaked like old bones, and distant howls pierced the night, sending chills racing up her spine. Thorn drove in silence, his hands steady on the wheel, but she could feel his gaze flicking toward her every few minutes, assessing, probing. "Where are you taking me?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The drug from the auction house still lingered in her system, making her thoughts fuzzy, but fear sharpened her senses. "To my territory," Thorn replied, his tone even, almost casual. "Blackwood Manor. It's safer than the streets of Eldridge Hollow, especially for someone like you." Someone like her. The words hung in the air, laced with unspoken meaning. Alara glanced at him, studying the sharp angles of his face illuminated by the dashboard glow. He was handsome in a rugged, untamed way, high cheekbones, full lips that seemed perpetually set in a frown, and those eyes. They held storms she couldn't begin to fathom. But there was something off about him, something that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. It wasn't just his size or the way he moved with predatory grace. It was the heat he radiated, like a furnace barely contained. "And what exactly am I?" she pressed, forcing bravado into her words. "You called me an Omega. I'm human, born and raised in the city, no fur or fangs." Thorn's chuckle was low, rumbling like distant thunder. "Humans don't end up in shifter auctions by accident, Alara. Your scent, it's mixed. Latent blood, perhaps. A dormant shifter line awakened by trauma." His eyes met hers in the rearview mirror for a split second, and she felt exposed, as if he could see straight through to her soul. Trauma. The word hit like a punch. Images flashed unbidden. The fire that had ravaged her childhood home, the screams of her parents, the searing pain as flames licked her skin. She'd survived, but barely left with scars that went far deeper than her flesh. Foster homes had followed, each one colder than the last, until she'd fled to the isolation of Eldridge Hollow, hoping to disappear. But disappearance, it seemed, wasn't in her cards. "I don't believe in your fairy tales," she muttered, turning to stare out the window. The trees blurred into a wall of green and shadow, but she swore she saw eyes glowing back yellow, watchful. "You will," Thorn said softly. "The full moon is rising. It pulls at us all." They drove on intense quiet, the road narrowing until it was little more than a dirt path swallowed by the woods. Finally, the manor loomed ahead, a sprawling stone estate shrouded in mist, its towers reaching toward the starlit sky like claws. Vines clung to the walls, and lanterns flickered in the windows, casting warm but eerie light. It looked ancient, forgotten, yet alive with secrets. Thorn parked and circled to open her door, his movements fluid, almost too smooth for a man his size. As she stepped out, a gust of wind carried the scent of pine and earth, mingled with something wilder musk, like an animal marking its territory. He offered his hand, but she ignored it, wrapping her arms around herself instead. "Welcome home," he said, a hint of irony in his voice. "This isn't my home," Elara shot back, but her defiance faltered as they entered. The foyer was grand, with polished wood floors and tapestries depicting wolves under moonlit skies, scenes of hunts, packs, and lone figures howling at the heavens. A fire crackled in a massive hearth, its warmth beckoning her closer despite herself. Thorn shed his coat, revealing a fitted shirt that hugged his muscular frame. He moved to a side table, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid from a decanter. "Whiskey. It'll steady your nerves." She accepted the glass warily, the burn down her throat grounding her. "Why me? Out of all those others at the auction, why bid on the scarred one no one wanted?" He leaned against the mantel, swirling his drink, his eyes distant. "Because you're not like the others. They were bred for submission, polished for packs. You're a survivor, and your scent calls to me in ways I can't ignore." Calls to him. Elara's cheeks flushed, a strange warmth pooling in her chest. It was absurd, she'd just been bought like chattel, yet his words stirred something deep, a pull she couldn't name. Fated, he'd implied earlier. But fate had never been kind to her. "Tell me about the scars," he said suddenly, his voice gentle but probing. She stiffened, setting the glass down with a clink. "Why? So you can pity me?" "No." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his breath on her skin. "Because I have my own." He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a jagged mark across his forearm, silver white, like hers, but thicker, as if from claws. "A reminder of betrayal. My own pack turned on me years ago, cursed me with exile. The Blackwood bloodline is ancient, tied to the moon's cycles, but power breeds enemies." Elara's breath caught. His vulnerability was unexpected, cracking the alpha facade. She reached out instinctively, her fingers tracing the scar lightly. His skin was hot, almost feverish, and a spark jumped between them, electric, undeniable. He inhaled sharply, his eyes darkening to midnight blue. "What kind of curse?" she whispered, pulling back but not breaking eye contact. "One that binds me to the shadows," he murmured. "Full moons bring the change, but it's uncontrolled, dangerous." He paused, as if weighing his words. "And you, Elara? What haunts you?" The question hung, inviting her to bare her soul. She hesitated, the walls she'd built over years trembling. "Fire," she admitted finally, her voice cracking. "It took everything, my family, my face, my trust. I've been running ever since, hiding from the world." Thorn nodded, understanding flickering in his gaze. "Hiding doesn't heal. Sometimes you need the pack, the bond, to mend what's broken." Bond. The word echoed, stirring that inexplicable pull again. She felt it in her veins, a warmth spreading like wildfire but slow, tentative. Was it the whiskey, the adrenaline, or something more primal? A howl echoed outside, closer now, and Thorn tensed, his body coiling like a spring. "Stay inside," he commanded, heading for the door. "The woods aren't safe tonight." "What's out there?" Elara called, following despite his warning. He paused, hand on the knob. "Rivals, scavengers from the auction, perhaps. Or just the wild calling." His eyes met hers, intense. "But you're safe with me, I promise." As he slipped into the night, Elara watched from the window, her heart racing. Shadows moved among the trees, shapes that looked too large for deer, too graceful for bears. Thorn vanished into the mist, but she heard a low growl, felt it resonate in her bones. Alone in the manor, she explored cautiously, drawn to a library lined with leather-bound tomes. One caught her eye: lunar bonds, the fate of mates. Flipping through, words jumped out: soul bonds, eternal pulls, Omega's awakening under alpha protection. Her fingers trembled. Was this real? Did it explain the strange connection she felt toward Thorn? A crash outside jolted her. Rushing to the window, she saw figures circling men, but their postures were wrong, hunched, eyes glowing. Thorn emerged from the trees, confronting them with a snarl that wasn't human. He moved like lightning, fending them off, but one lunged. Claws, glinting in the moonlight. Alara's breath fogged the glass. He wasn't just a man. The suspicion solidified, a knot of fear and fascination twisting in her gut. What was he hiding? And why did her heart ache at the thought of him in danger? As the intruders fled, Thorn returned, bloodied but victorious, his shirt torn. He caught her staring, his expression guarded. "You saw, not everything," she replied, her voice steady. "But enough to know you're not telling me the truth," he sighed, wiping blood from his lip. "Tomorrow, when the moon wanes. For now, rest." She nodded, but sleep was far off. As she lay in the guest room, the manor's creaks like whispers. That pull grew stronger, a thread of destiny weaving them together, whether she wanted it or not. Little did she know, the secrets of Blackwood Manor ran deeper, and the bond awakening within her would soon demand everything. Alara tossed in the massive four-poster bed, the silk sheets tangling around her like invisible restraints. Blackwood Manor's guest room was luxurious: high ceilings, velvet drapes, a fireplace that crackled softly but it felt like a gilded cage. Moonlight streamed through the arched windows, painting the floor in silvery patterns that danced like restless spirits. Sleep evaded her, chased away by the events of the night. Thorn's feral growl, the glint of claws in the shadows, the way his eyes had shifted from blue to gold as he dispatched the intruders. She sat up, hugging her knees to her chest. The book from the library, Lunar Bonds, lay open on the nightstand, its pages whispering of mates and transformations. It was all myth, surely. Yet Thorn's words echoed. The moon pulls at us all, and that pull, she felt it too, a subtle ache in her core, drawing her toward him like a tide to the shore. It terrified her, this inexplicable connection to a man, a stranger who'd upended her world. A soft knock at the door jolted her. "Alara, are you awake?" Thorn's voice, muffled but concerned. She hesitated, then patted across the cool floorboards, cracking the door open. He stood there, freshly bandaged, his torn shirt replaced by a loose linen one that hung open at the collar, revealing glimpses of toned chest marked by fresh bruises. His hair was disheveled, and fatigue etched lines around his eyes, but he managed a faint smile that softened his rugged features. "Couldn't sleep," she admitted, stepping back to let him in. "Those things outside, what were they?" Thorn entered, closing the door quietly behind him. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, as if putting distance between them. "Scouts from a rival pack, the Silver Claws. They've been testing my borders for months, looking for weaknesses." His gaze flicked to the window, where the full moon hung low and bloated. "Tonight's light makes them bold. Pack, borders." The words were foreign, yet they stirred a vague familiarity, like a half-remembered dream. Alara moved to the window, staring at the moon. It seemed larger here, almost alive, its glow making her skin tingle. "And you fought them off alone? With, what, your bare hands?" He chuckled darkly, but there was no humor in it. "Something like that." He pushed off the wall, joining her at the window. Their shoulders brushed, and that spark ignited again, warm, insistent. She didn't move away. "You're hiding something," she said, turning to face him. Up close, his scent enveloped her, wood smoke, pine, and something wilder, like fur after rain. It was intoxicating, making her head spin. "Those weren't just men. I saw claws, Thorn, eyes that glowed. Tell me the truth." His expression tightened, a storm brewing in his eyes. "The truth isn't simple, Alara. This world, the shifter world, it's governed by instincts, by blood. Revealing too much too soon could endanger you more." "Endanger me?" She laughed bitterly, gesturing to her scars. "I've been endangered my whole life, dragged here against my will, sold like property. If I'm part of this, I deserve to know." Thorn reached out, his hand hovering near her cheek before dropping. "You're right, but trust me when I say some secrets are chains. Mine have kept me isolated for years." He paused, his voice lowering. "The curse I mentioned, it's tied to my family. Blackwoods were once kings among shifters, but a betrayal centuries ago bound us to the moon's whims. Full moons bring pain, change. I control it, mostly, but it leaves me, marked, shifters. There it was, the word hanging between them like a veil lifting. Alara's heart raced. Shifters? Like werewolves? The question sounded absurd, even as pieces clicked. The howls, the auction's whispers, his unnatural speed. He didn't deny it, his silence confirmation enough. Instead, he took her hand gently, his touch sending waves of heat through her. Not like the stories. We're real, Alara. Pacts, hierarchies, ancient laws. And your scent suggests you're more than human. An omega awakening, perhaps triggered by your past. She pulled her hand away, but not harshly. The contact lingered, a ghost on her skin. Awakening? I don't feel different, just scared. Alone. You're not alone, he murmured, stepping closer. The space between them crackled with tension, the air thick with unspoken desire. His eyes searched hers, vulnerability cracking his guarded facade. I've been alone too. Exiled from my pack after my father's death, poisoned by those silver claws. I built this manor as a sanctuary, but it's empty. Until now. Alara's breath caught. His confession mirrored her own isolation, forging a bridge over the chasm of suspicion. She wanted to push him away, to run from this madness, but that pull anchored her. Slowly, she reached up, tracing the scar on his jaw. What if I can't be what you think I am? What if I'm just broken? You're not broken, Thorn whispered, covering her hand with his. His thumb stroked her knuckles, gentle yet possessive. Scars are proof of strength. They call to me, Alara, like a mate's bond. Mate. The word from the book sent a shiver through her, a mix of fear and longing. Was this fate? Or manipulation? She leaned in, their foreheads nearly touching, breaths mingling. The moment stretched, charged, until a distant howl shattered it. Thorn tensed, pulling back. They're back. Stay here. No, Alara grabbed his arm, her grip firm. If this is my world now, I won't hide. He studied her, pride flickering in his eyes. Stubborn Omega, but he nodded, leading her downstairs to the foyer. Outside, the moon bathed the grounds in ethereal light. Shadows lurked at the tree line, 3 figures, larger than before, their forms shifting unnaturally. Stay behind me, Thorn growled, his voice deepening, almost animalistic. He stepped onto the porch, body coiling with power. Alara watched from the doorway, heart pounding. The lead intruder snarled, his voice guttural. Blackwood, hand over the latent. She belongs to no pack, fair game for the taking. She's mine, Thorn roared, the sound vibrating through Alara's bones. He lunged, moving with blinding speed. Claws extended from his fingers long, lethal, and his eyes glowed amber. The fight was brutal, a blur of fur and fangs as partial shifts rippled across his form. He wasn't fully transforming, but the glimpses were enough. Wolf-like strength, predatory grace. Alara's world tilted. He was a shifter, a werewolf. The realization hit like a wave, but instead of terror, a strange calm settled. That pull intensified, urging her forward. When one attacker broke free, charging toward her, instinct took over. She grabbed a poker from the fireplace, swinging it with surprising force. The blow connected, sending the intruder reeling. Thorn finished the others, then turned, breathing heavily. Blood streaked his arms, but his eyes softened as they met hers. You fought back. I had to, she said, dropping the poker. Adrenaline surged, mixing with the bond's warmth. He approached, cupping her face, his touch igniting sparks. You're awakening, he murmured. I can feel it. Their lips were inches apart, the tension electric. But another howl echoed, more distant, yet ominous. Thorn pulled away reluctantly. We need to reinforce the wards. Come dawn, I'll explain everything. As they retreated inside, Alara felt the bond deepen, a slow burn of trust budding amid the suspense. But questions lingered. What was this awakening? And what secrets did the silver claws hold that made them so desperate for her? The night held its breath, promising revelations that could bind them forever or tear them apart. Dawn crept over the whispering woods like a hesitant lover, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds that filtered through the manor's heavy drapes. Alara stood by the kitchen window, a mug of steaming coffee clutched in her hands, its bitterness a stark contrast to the sweetness of the morning light. The events of the night replayed in her mind, Thorn's partial transformation, the feral grace of his movements, the way his touch had ignited something within her. She hadn't slept much after they'd barricaded the doors, her body humming with adrenaline and that persistent pull the bond. As the book called it, Thorn entered quietly, his footsteps barely audible on the tiled floor. He'd changed into fresh clothes, dark jeans and a simple gray shirt that clung to his broad frame, accentuating the bruises fading unnaturally fast on his skin. Shifter healing, she supposed. He poured himself a cup, leaning against the counter opposite her, his presence filling the room without effort. You promised explanations, Alara said, her voice steady but laced with expectation. She met his gaze, those blue eyes now calm, like the sea after a storm. He nodded, setting his mug down. I did. Sit. He gestured to the wooden table by the window, where sunlight pooled like liquid gold. They settled across from each other, the distance feeling both necessary and tortuous. Thorn's fingers drummed lightly on the tabletop, a rare sign of unease from the otherwise stoic Alpha. The shifter world is ancient, he began, his voice low and measured. We trace back to the old gods, bound by the moon's cycles. Full moons force the change wolf form, primal instincts unleashed. But for most, it's controlled, a gift. For my bloodline, it's a curse. He paused, his eyes distant, as if reliving memories. Centuries ago, a Blackwood ancestor betrayed a powerful witch. She cursed our line, uncontrolled shifts, pain that drives us mad if unchecked. I've learned to harness it, but it isolates me. Packs fear the instability. Alar absorbed his words, the puzzle pieces fitting together. And the packs? Like the Silver Claws? Rivals, he confirmed, a growl edging his tone. They seek to expand, absorb territories. My exile weakened the Blackwoods, but I hold this land through sheer will. The auction, it's a neutral ground for trades, alliances. But taking latents like you humans with dormant shifter blood, it's forbidden by old laws. Yet desperation breeds recklessness. Latent. The term still chafed. Why me? You keep saying my scent. This bond. What does it mean? Thorn leaned forward, his elbows on the table, closing the gap slightly. In our lore, mates are fated souls linked by the moon. It's rare, powerful. A pull that heals wounds, strengthens packs. Your scent hit me like a thunderbolt at the auction. Scarred Omega or not, it's you. But it's not just attraction. It's destiny trying to weave us together. Destiny. The words sent a flutter through her chest, warm and terrifying. Elara set her mug down, her scarred hand brushing his accidentally. Neither pulled away. Instead, their fingers intertwined slowly, tentatively. His skin was warm, calloused from fights, and the wild, yet gentle in its hold. I feel it too, she admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. This ache, like something missing, is suddenly within reach. But I've never believed in fate. Life's been too cruel for that. Thorn's thumb traced circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. Tell me about the cruelty, he urged, his eyes locking onto hers with genuine curiosity. The fire, you mentioned it briefly. What happened? She hesitated, the walls around her heart cracking further. No one had ever asked like this, as if her pain mattered. I was 10, my parents. We lived in a small town, normal life. A faulty wire sparked it. I woke to smoke, flames everywhere. I tried to save them, but the roof collapsed. Her voice cracked, tears welling unbidden. I crawled out, burned and broken. The scars are the least of it. Foster homes saw me as damaged goods, to quiet, to withdrawn. I learned to hide, to survive alone. Thorn's grip tightened, supportive. Alone is a heavy burden. I know it well. He released her hand briefly to roll up his sleeve again, exposing more scars crisscrossing his arm like a map of battles. These aren't just from fights. The curse. During shifts, if emotions run high, it tears at me from inside. After my father's murder, I lost control. Killed a Silver Claw scout in rage. My pack exiled me, fearing I'd bring doom. I've wandered these woods since, building walls higher than this manor. Their shared loneliness hung in the air, a bridge forging between them. Alara reached across, her fingers exploring his scars with feather-light touches. We're both marked, she murmured. Maybe that's why this feels right. He captured her hand, bringing it to his lips in a soft kiss that made her breath hitch. The gesture was intimate, charged with the slow burn of their connection. It is right, Alara, but bonds like ours awaken things. Your latent blood, it could mean shifts for you too, under the moon's pull. That's why the Silver Claws want you. a fresh omega to bolster their numbers, especially one tied to me. Suspicion flickered anew. Tied? How? You haven't fully shifted in front of me. Is there more to your secret? Thorn's expression shuddered slightly, a shadow crossing his features. The full truth. It's dangerous. Revealing it could force the bond faster. And you're not ready. He stood, pacing to the window, his back to her. The sunlight haloed him, but tension coiled in his shoulders. Alara rose, approaching him. She placed a hand on his back, feeling the muscles tense, then relax under her touch. I'm stronger than you think. Last night, fighting back, it felt natural. Like something inside me stirred. He turned, pulling her into a loose embrace. Their bodies fit together effortlessly, her head resting against his chest where his heart thundered. That's the awakening, he whispered into her hair. But pushing it could hurt you. Give it time. The moment stretched, their breaths sinking, the bond pulsing like a living thing. Alara tilted her head up, their lips inches apart, the air electric with possibility. But a knock at the door shattered it, a heavy, insistent pounding. Thorn growled low, releasing her reluctantly. Stay here. He strode to the entrance, peering through a side window before opening it cautiously. A weary man stood there, cloaked in shadows despite the dawn, his eyes darting nervously. Alpha Blackwood. Message from the elders. The Silver Claws demand parley at noon, neutral ground. They claim rights to the latent. Thorn's jaw clenched. Tell them I'll be there. Alone. The messenger nodded and vanished into the woods. Thorn closed the door, his face a mask of resolve. This complicates things. Alara stepped forward, determination hardening her features. You're not going alone. If I'm the prize, I deserve a say. He cupped her cheek, his touch lingering. Brave Omega. But it's risky. They're Alpha, Darius, he's cunning, ruthless. Then teach me, she insisted, the bond urging her closer. About your world, about us. Thorn sighed, but a spark of admiration lit his eyes. All right, we'll prepare together. As they moved to the library, poring over ancient texts on shifter lore. The suspense built, hints of his full secret teasing at the edges, the bond deepening with every shared glance and accidental touch. But the parley loomed, a test that could unravel everything. Forcing truths into the light, the library of Blackwood Manor smelled of aged leather and forgotten lore. A sanctuary amid the encroaching threats of the outside world. Sunlight slanted through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits as Alara and Thorn poured over a massive oak table strewn with maps and ancient volumes. The parley with the Silver Claws loomed like a storm cloud, set for noon at the neutral glade deep in the woods, a sacred site where shifter packs had brokered uneasy pieces for generations. Thorn unrolled a yellowed parchment, his finger tracing the winding paths of the forest. The glade is warded by old magic, he explained, his voice a steady rumble that grounded her amid the chaos. No full shifts allowed, no bloodshed without consequence. But words can be as deadly as claws. Alara leaned in, her shoulder brushing his, the contact sending a familiar warmth through her. In the hours since the messenger's arrival, they'd fallen into a rhythm, him teaching, her absorbing, their conversations weaving deeper into personal territories. And Darius? What does he want with me, really? Thorn's jaw tightened, a shadow crossing his features. Power. Latents like you are rare. Awakening one under an alpha's bond can tip balances. If he claims you, it weakens me, strengthens his pack. He met her eyes, the blue depths swirling with unspoken worry. But I won't let that happen. His protectiveness stirred something in her, a flutter of trust budding like a fragile bloom. She placed her hand over his on the map, feeling the calluses that spoke of battles fought alone. We're in this together now. Teach me how to navigate it. He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips, the first genuine one she'd seen, softening the hard lines of his face. For the next hour, he guided her through shifter etiquette, the subtle sense that betrayed lies, the postures of dominance and submission, the ancient phrases that. Alara shivered, not from cold. It feels like waking from a long sleep, but it's scary, not knowing what's coming. She turned in his arms, their faces close. Like with you. I want to know all of you, Thorn. The good, the monstrous. He held her gaze, vulnerability, cracking his alpha facade. The monstrous part. It's not just a wolf. The curse amplifies it, makes me a beast of legend, rage incarnate. I've lost control before, during a full moon, after my exile. It nearly destroyed everything I'd built. His voice dropped to a whisper. If the bond awakens it in you, I couldn't bear hurting you. The confession hung heavy, forging another layer in their connection. Elara wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her head against his chest. His heartbeat thrummed strong and steady, a rhythm that synced with hers. You've protected me so far. Let me protect you too from the isolation, the fear. Thorn's arms encircled her, holding her close in an embrace that spoke volumes. They stood like that for minutes, the world fading to just the two of them, the scarred Omega and the cursed Alpha, finding solace in shared wounds. The bond thrummed, emotional tendrils weaving tighter, healing fractures she'd long ignored. As evening fell, they moved to the kitchen, preparing a simple meal together. The domesticity was grounding, Thorn chopping vegetables with efficient grace, Elara stirring a pot of stew. Their conversations flowing from light banter to deeper revelations. I never cooked much before, Thorn admitted, a rueful smile on his lips as he handed her herbs. Pack life meant hunts and feasts, not this. Elara laughed softly, the sound easing the day's tension. I lived on takeout and books, but this, it's nice, normal almost. He watched her, eyes softening. Normal isn't our fate, but moments like this they're worth fighting for. He reached across the counter, his hand covering hers. Tell me something no one knows about you. A dream, a fear. She hesitated, then met his gaze. I always wanted to write my own story, not just read others. A tale where the scarred girl finds her place. But fear of rejection kept me from trying. Thorn nodded, understanding. My dream was to unite the packs, end the rivalries. But the curse turned it to ash. Fear of losing control keeps me chained here. He squeezed her hand. Until you make me want to fight again. The words warmed her from within, the bond's pull intensifying, a slow, emotional crescendo that made her ache for more. Dinner passed in companionable quiet, stolen glances building anticipation. Afterward, they retired to the library, where Thorn lit a fire, its flames casting flickering shadows that mirrored the suspense in the air. Seated on a plush rug, backs against the hearth, they shared a bottle of aged wine. Thorn's arm draped casually around her shoulders, pulling her closer. The next full moon is in 3 days, he said, his tone grave. The curse peaks then. I usually chain myself in the cellar, away from the world. Elara turned to him, concern etching her features. Alone? That's no way to live. It's necessary, he replied, but doubt laced his words. Unless the bond could anchor me. Mates share strength, temper the wild. The implication hung, charged with possibility. She leaned in, her hand on his thigh, feeling the muscle tense. Then let me be your anchor. Their lips were a breath apart, the tension electric. Thorn's eyes darkened with desire, but he held back, fingers tracing her jaw. It would bind us deeper. No turning back. Before she could respond, a sharp crack echoed outside a branch. Or something more sinister. Thorn was on his feet in an instant, senses alert. Stay here. But Elara followed, grabbing a dagger from the armory. They stepped onto the porch, the night air cool and thick with mist. Shapes moved in the trees, eyes glinting, low growls rumbling. Silver claws, Thorn snarled, his body shifting subtly, claws emerging. They're probing again. A figure emerged, not Darius, but a scout, lean and feral. Message from the Alpha, the latent's bloodline traces to us. Proof in the archives. Surrender her, or we take her by force. Thorn's roar shook the air, partial shift rippling across his form, first sprouting along his arms, eyes glowing. He lunged, dispatching the scout with restrained fury. But not before the intruder slashed his side, blood blooming dark on his shirt. Elara rushed forward as the scout fled, her hands pressing against the wound. Thorn, he winced but pulled her close, his breath ragged. It's healing, but their claim, if true, it changes everything. Doubt flickered in her eyes, but the bond held firm. As they retreated inside, tending his injury, the suspense mounted. What secrets did her blood hold? And how would Thorn's full monstrous form test their fragile union? The night deepened, promising revelations that could solidify their love or shatter it forever. The fire in the manor's sitting room crackled softly, its warm glow casting dancing shadows across the walls as Elara knelt beside Thorn on the worn leather couch. She peeled back his blood-soaked shirt with careful hands, revealing the gash along his ribs, deep but already knitting together under his shifter healing. The sight both fascinated and unnerved her. Human wounds didn't mend like this, a stark reminder of the world she'd been thrust into. Thorn winced as she applied a herbal poultice he'd directed her to mix, his breath hissing through clenched teeth. "It's not as bad as it looks," he assured her, his voice strained but steady. "By morning, it'll be a scar like the others." Alara met his gaze, her fingers lingering on his skin, tracing the edges of older marks that told stories of survival. The bond thrummed between them, a living current that amplified every touch, every shared glance. "Scars we share," she murmured, echoing their earlier conversation. But the scout's words lingered like poison, her bloodline tracing to the Silverclaws. If true, it could unravel everything their budding trust. Her place here. Thorn covered her hand with his, halting her ministrations. "Alara," about what he said, "your lineage. We need to investigate. If there's truth to it, it could explain your latent abilities, why the pull feels so strong." She nodded, though doubt coiled in her gut. "How? I don't even know my family's history beyond the fire. Everything burned records, photos me." Her voice cracked on the last word, vulnerability surfacing like an old wound reopening. He shifted, pulling her up to sit beside him, his arm wrapping around her shoulders in a protective hold. The closeness was intoxicating, his scent enveloping her like a comforting fog. "There's a way. The Manor's archives hold packed genealogies, blood rights that can reveal truths. But it's risky. Invoking old magic could accelerate your awakening." Suspense hung in the air, thick as the mist outside. Alara leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder, feeling the rise and fall of his chest. "And your curse? Would it affect the rite?" Thorn tensed, his free hand clenching into a fist. "Possibly." The beast within. "It's tied to blood magic. Stirring it might bring the monster closer to the surface." He turned his head, his lips brushing her temple in a feather-light kiss that sent shivers down her spine. "I don't want you to see that side yet. Not until I know you won't run." The confession deepened their emotional tether, a slow unraveling of guards that made her heart ache. "I'm not running," she whispered, tilting her face to meet his eyes. "Whatever you are, Thorn Wolf, monster, Alpha, it's part of you. And you're becoming part of me." His blue gaze softened, flecked with gold in the firelight, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the space between them. He cupped her cheek, his thumb stroking her scar with a tenderness that belied his strength. The bond pulsed, urging them closer. But he held back, the suspense of his secret, a barrier yet to cross. Instead, he pulled her fully into his lap, holding her as if she were fragile porcelain. Though his touch spoke of deeper desires restrained, they sat like that for what felt like hours. The fire's warmth, mirroring the slow burn building within. Conversation flowed in hushed tones, Alara sharing fragments of her lost childhood, like the lullabies her mother sang, now half-forgotten melodies. Thorn reciprocated with tales of his youth, moonlit runs with his pack, the thrill of the hunt, the betrayal that shattered it all. "My father taught me control," he said, his voice low as he stared into the flames. "But after his death, rage consumed me. The curse amplified it, turning shifts into nightmares. I've chained myself during full moons ever since, alone in the dark." Alara's hand found his, intertwining their fingers. "You don't have to be alone anymore." The words were a promise, forging another link in their chain of trust. She felt the shift inside her, a warmth spreading from her core, like dormant embers igniting. Was this the awakening he spoke of? It scared her, but with him, it felt right. As midnight approached, Thorn suggested they consult the archives despite the late hour. Better now, before the Silverclaws pressed their claim. The archive room was a vault beneath the manor, accessed by a hidden stairwell lit by glowing runes. Shelves groaned under the weight of dusty tomes and sealed vials, the air thick with the scent of parchment and magic. Thorn lit candles with a flick of his wrist, another subtle hint of his powers, and pulled down a leather-bound volume etched with wolf motifs. "This is the blood ledger," he explained, opening it to yellowed pages filled with intricate family trees. "A drop of blood here." He pointed to a blank rune, "and it reveals connections." Alara hesitated, the suspense building. "What if it confirms I'm Silverclaw? Would you let me go?" Thorn's expression darkened, possessive fire in his eyes. "Never. Bond or not, you're mine to protect." He pricked her finger with a silver needle, a single crimson drop falling onto the page. The rune glowed, lines snaking across the parchment like veins, forming a web of names. They watched in tense silence as the magic worked. Names emerged, Voss lineage tracing back centuries, intersecting with shifter packs. But not Silverclaw Blackwood. Alara's breath caught, It says, "My great-grandmother was a black widow mega, exiled for loving a human." Thorn's eyes widened, then softened with wonder. That explains the pull. You're tied to my bloodline, Alara. Fate brought you back. Relief washed over her, mingled with awe. She turned to him, the bond surging like a tidal wave. We're connected by more than chance. He pulled her close, their foreheads touching, breaths mingling. More than blood, soul-bound. His lips hovered near hers, the tension electric, but a low growl escaped his throat, not of desire, but pain. He stepped back, clutching his side where the wound had been. The magic. It's stirring, the curse. Alara reached for him, concern overriding the moment. What can I do? Nothing, he rasped, eyes flickering gold. Lock me in the cellar. The full moon's pull is early triggered, but as she helped him down the stairs, chains rattling in the dim light, doubts crept in. The scout's claim was false, but what other lies did the silver clothes weave? And Thorn's monster would seeing it break or bind them. He secured the chains himself, his movements labored. Go upstairs. Bar the door. Alara shook her head, kneeling beside him. I'm staying. Anchor, remember? Thorn's gaze was tormented, but grateful. As the first tremors of the shift began, for rippling across his skin, the bond held firm, a beacon in the gathering storm. But the night was young, and the true test loomed. Secrets clawing to the surface, the cellar beneath Blackwood Manor was a chamber of echoes and iron. Its stone walls etched with runes that pulsed faintly like dying embers. Chains rattled softly as Thorn secured the last manacle around his wrist, the metal cold against his feverish skin. Moonlight filtered through a narrow barred window high above, its silver glow intensifying the tremors rippling through his body. Alara knelt before him, her scarred hands steady as she adjusted the links, refusing to leave despite his pleas. You should go, Thorn growled, his voice already deepening, laced with the beast's rumble. Sweat beaded on his brow, and his eyes flickered between blue and molten gold. If I lose control, I could hurt you. Alara shook her head, her resolve unwavering. The bond thrummed in her chest, a warm anchor pulling her closer, defying the fear gnawing at her edges. I'm your mate, remember? Or close to it. If this bond means anything, let it help. She cupped his face, her thumbs brushing the stubble along his jaw, feeling the heat radiating from him like a forge. The contact sent sparks through her veins, deepening the emotional tether that had grown from suspicion to something profound. Thorn leaned into her touch, his breath ragged. Stubborn woman, he murmured, a faint smile ghosting his lips despite the pain. Your Blackwood blood. It calls to mine, but the curse twists everything. What you'll see, it's not the noble wolf of legends. It's rage incarnate, a shadow of what I could be. The suspense coiled tighter, his words a veil over the secret he guarded so fiercely. Alara's heart ached for him, this alpha, exiled and cursed, bearing his burdens in solitude until fate had thrust her into his world. She thought of her own isolation, the years of hiding behind scars and silence, and saw a mirror in his eyes. We've both been monsters in our own ways, she whispered, hiding from the world, but together, maybe we can face them. He pulled her closer with his unchained hand, their foreheads pressing together in a moment of raw intimacy. The air between them crackled, charged with the slow burn of their connection, emotional layers peeling back like onion skins. Thorn's scent intensified, wild and comforting, wrapping around her like a promise. If I make it through this with you here, it changes everything. The bond will seal, unbreakable. Before she could respond, a spasm racked his body. He arched back, a guttural groan escaping as bones shifted audibly beneath his skin. Fur sprouted in patches along his arms, dark and coarse, and his muscles bulged, straining against his shirt. Alara backed away a step, her pulse thundering, but she didn't flee. Instead, she sat cross-legged on the cold floor, watching with a mix of awe and terror. Talk to me, she urged, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Tell me something real. About your fears, your hopes. Anchor yourself to me. Thorn's eyes locked onto hers, the gold overtaking the blue like eclipse shadows. Fears. Losing you before we've begun. The curse has taken everything. Pack, family. What if it takes this too? His voice distorted, growing deeper, but he fought it, chains clanking as he gripped them. Hopes. A life with you. Runs in the woods, not as predator and prey, but equals. Healing your scars as you heal mine. His words wove into her soul, deepening the bond's hold. Elara felt it bloom inside her, a warmth spreading from her core, easing old aches she'd carried since the fire. Tears pricked her eyes, not from fear, but from the vulnerability he offered. "My hopes match yours," she confessed, scooting closer despite the risk. "A place where I'm not the scarred outcast. With you, I feel seen, not pitied, but wanted." Another wave hit him, his body convulsing. Claws extended fully now, longer than before, curved like sides. His face elongated slightly, fangs peeking from his lips. But it wasn't a clean shift, it was warped, monstrous, his form swelling to nearly twice his size, shadows seeming to cling to him like a second skin. The curse's twist manifested. Dark veins pulsed under his fur, eyes glowing with feral hunger. He roared, the sound echoing off the walls, shaking dust from the ceiling. Alar's breath caught, suspense, peaking as the beast emerged. This was the secret, the monster he'd hidden. Yet, beneath the terror, the bond pulsed reassurance, urging her to see the man within. "Thorn," she called, her voice cutting through the roar. "Look at me. Remember the auction, the drive here, our talks. You're more than this." He lunged against the chains, but his gaze found hers, the gold flickering with recognition. "Elara, it burns. The rage. It's consuming." His voice was a gravelly snarl, barely human. She inched forward, heart pounding, and placed her hand on his massive, paw-like hand. The fur was rough, but the spark jumped between them, electric, binding. "Then let me share it. The bond, use it." Emotions surged, her loneliness feeding into his isolation mirroring hers, forging a bridge of mutual healing. Thorn shuddered, the monstrous form trembling as he fought for control. Slowly, the dark veins receded, his size diminishing inch by inch. He collapsed against the wall, panting, the shift, reversing in fits and starts. "You're anchoring me," he gasped, eyes clearing to blue. "No one's ever stayed." Alara didn't release his hand, tears streaming down her face. "I couldn't leave. This bond, it's real, Thorn. It saved you." As the moon's pull waned, he pulled her into his arms, still partially shifted, but gentler now. They held each other through the remnants of the transformation, whispers of comfort exchanged in the dim light. The emotional build-up crested, their connection solidified in shared trial, vulnerabilities laid bare. By dawn, Thorn was fully human again, exhausted but whole. He unchained himself, drawing her up with him. "You saw the monster," he said softly, searching her eyes for rejection. "And I stayed," she replied, pressing a kiss to his palm. The gesture was intimate, a promise of more to come. But as they ascended the stairs, a new howl pierced the morning silver claws, closer than before. Thorn tensed. "They're coming. Your bloodline revelation. It threatens them." Alara nodded, the bond giving her strength. "Then we faced them together." But questions lingered. How far would the silver claws go? And with the bond sealed, what new powers and dangers would awaken in her? The manor held its breath. The next challenge on the horizon's light pierced the manor's eastern windows like golden spears, banishing the night's shadows but not the echoes of Thorn's transformation. Alara stood in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea, staring out at the whispering woods where mist clung to the trees like reluctant ghosts. The bond thrummed within her, stronger now, a constant hum that connected her to Thorn even as he moved about upstairs, recovering from the ordeal. She could feel his lingering fatigue, a subtle ache mirrored in her own bones. As if their souls had truly intertwined during those harrowing hours in the cellar, the memory of his monstrous form, swollen muscles, shadowed veins, feral eyes should have terrified her. But instead, it deepened her resolve. She'd seen the beast and chosen to stay, her touch anchoring him back to humanity. Yet, suspense lingered. What did this sealing mean for her? The warmth in her core had intensified, stirring instincts she didn't understand. Was her own shift imminent? And the silver claw's howls persistent, closer, hinted at escalating dangers. Thorn descended the stairs, his footsteps deliberate, quieter than usual. He entered the kitchen shirtless, fresh bandages wrapping his torso where self-inflicted scratches from the shift had marred his skin. His dark hair was tousled, eyes clear blue, but ringed with exhaustion. He paused in the doorway, watching her with intensity that made her pulse quicken. "You're still here," he said softly, as if half expecting her to have fled. Alara set the mug down, crossing to him. "Where else would I be?" She reached up, her fingers tracing the edge of a bandage, feeling the heat of his healing flesh. The contact ignited the bond, sending waves of emotion through them. His relief, her determination, mingling like rivers converging. He captured her hand, bringing it to his lips in a lingering kiss. After what you saw, most would run. The monster isn't just a phase. It's part of me, always lurking. His voice held a note of vulnerability, cracking the alpha armor further. She stepped closer, their bodies aligning in a way that felt natural, inevitable. I saw you, Thorn. All of you. And it didn't change this. She placed her free hand over his heart, feeling its steady beat sync with hers. The slow burn of their connection built, emotional layers unfolding, trust earned through fire and shadow. Thorn's arms encircled her waist, pulling her flush against him. The bond is sealed now. I feel you in my veins, Alara. Your thoughts brush mine, your strength bolsters me. He tilted her chin up, their gazes locking. But it awakens things in you too. Your Blackwood blood, it's calling louder. Soon, the moon might pull at you as it does me. Suspense tightened in her chest, a mix of fear and anticipation. What would her awakening bring? A wolf like his, or something twisted by her latent heritage? She pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the man before her. Then we'll face it together. No more hiding. His lips curved into a rare, genuine smile, softening his rugged features. Together, he leaned down, his breath warm against her skin, but stopped short of a kiss, the tension electric. Instead, he rested his forehead against hers, sharing breath, sharing essence. The moment stretched, deepening their emotional bond, a silent vow amid the morning light. They broke apart reluctantly as another howl echoed from the woods, closer this time. Thorn's expression hardened. Silver claws. They're emboldened, sensing the bond's power. We can't wait for them to strike. Alara nodded, the bond lending her courage. What do we do? Scout the borders, he replied, moving to grab his coat. And prepare you. If your awakening comes, you'll need control. They ventured into the woods, the air crisp with autumn's bite, leaves crunching underfoot like brittle bones. Thorn taught her as they walked how to scent the wind for intruders, how to move silently like a shadow. His hand often found hers, guiding, reassuring, each touch building the intimacy between them. Tell me about your great-grandmother, Alara said, as they paused by an ancient oak, its trunk scarred like her own skin. The one who exiled herself for love. Thorn leaned against the tree, his eyes distant. Alara Blackwood, the first of our line to mate outside the pack. She fell for a human scholar, defying the alphas. They fled, but the curse followed her blood. It's why latents like you exist, diluted, but potent. He reached out, tucking a leaf from her hair. Her story mirrors ours. Love against odds. The parallel stirred her, emotions swelling. Did they find happiness? For a time, he murmured, his fingers lingering on her cheek. Until rivals hunted them. But their bond, it endured in legends. His gaze intensified. Ours will too. Alara's heart swelled, the bond pulsing with shared hope. She leaned in, their lips finally meeting in a soft, tentative kiss, electric, sealing promises unspoken. It was brief, but profound, the slow build-up crusting in a wave of connection that left them breathless. A rustle in the underbrush shattered the moment. Thorn whirled, pushing her behind him. Intruders. 2 silver claw scouts emerged, snarling, eyes glowing with malice. The latents bonded now, one growled. Darius wants her, her power could break your curse, Blackwood, but in our favor. Thorn's growl rumbled deep, partial shift, rippling claws extending, but controlled, thanks to the bond. She belongs to no one but herself. The fight was swift. Thorn's enhanced strength, bolstered by their link, dispatched one scout. Alara, feeling the awakening stir, grabbed a branch and swung at the other, her movements instinctive, fiercer than before. The scout yelped, retreating with a warning. The full assault comes at dusk. Surrender or perish. As they hurried back to the manor, Thorn bandaged a shallow cut on her arm, his touch gentle. You fought like a true Omega awakening. Alara winced but smiled. It felt right. But suspense gnawed, Darius's words about breaking the curse. What secret did the silver claws hold about her power? Inside, Thorn fortified the doors, his worry evident. The bond gives us strength, but they're desperate. There might be more to your lineage, something they fear. Alara pulled him close, their embrace a fortress against the coming storm. Whatever comes, we face it as one. The emotional depth grew. But the assault loomed, promising betrayals and revelations that could test their unbreakable tie. Dusk draped the whispering woods in a shroud of crimson and indigo. the sun's dying light casting long shadows that seemed to creep toward Blackwood Manor like advancing soldiers. Elara stood at the manor's parapet, her hands gripping the stone railing, the cool evening breeze carrying the distant howls of the Silverclaws. The bond with Thorn pulsed within her, a steady rhythm that fortified her resolve, yet it couldn't quell the knot of suspense twisting in her stomach. Darius's cryptic words echoed. Her power could break the curse. What did that mean? And with her awakening simmering just beneath the surface, would she become an asset in this battle or a liability? Thorn joined her, his presence a solid anchor amid the uncertainty. He donned dark leather armor etched with protective runes, a dagger at his belt and a bow slung over his shoulder. His blue eyes scanned the tree line, sharp and vigilant, but when they met hers, they softened with the depth of their shared connection. "They're coming," he said quietly, his hand finding the small of her back. The touch sent warmth spiraling through her, deepening the emotional tether that had grown from tentative trust to something unbreakable. Elara leaned into him, drawing strength from his solidity. "How many?" "Enough to test us," he replied, his voice a low rumble. "But the bond, it amplifies everything. I feel your courage feeding mine." He turned her to face him, his fingers tilting her chin up. The fading light highlighted the scar on his jaw, a reminder of his battles, mirroring her own marks. "Whatever happens tonight, know this. You've given me hope I thought lost. A future beyond the curse." His words stirred her soul, the slow emotional build-up reaching a poignant crest. Tears pricked her eyes as she placed her hand over his heart, feeling its beat echo hers through the bond. "And you've shown me I'm not broken," she whispered. "Scarred, yes, but whole with you. I love you, Thorn. Fate or not, this bond it's us." Thorn's breath caught, his eyes darkening with emotion. "Elara." He pulled her close, his lips, capturing hers in a kiss that was fierce yet tender, pouring out the confessions they'd danced around. It was a revelation, their souls entwining fully, no more hesitations, just raw commitment. The world faded, the impending siege momentarily forgotten in the depth of their embrace. When they parted, breathless, he murmured against her lips, "I love you too. My mate, my anchor. We'll claim our shared fate tonight." The moment sealed their devotion, but suspense lingered like the gathering dark. Elara felt the awakening stir stronger, a primal itch under her skin, as if the bond's completion had unlocked something wild within. What form would it take? And Thorn's monster, would the battle force it out again, revealing facets even he feared? A chorus of howls shattered the tranquility, closer now, vibrating through the air like war drums. Thorn tensed, breaking away to notch an arrow. To the defenses, they descended to the ground level, where Thorn had set traps, warded pits, silver lace nets, and rune barriers that hummed with magic. Elara gripped a staff he'd given her, topped with a crystal that amplified latent energy. Her hands trembled slightly, but the bond steadied her. Thorn's confidence bleeding into her own, the first wave emerged from the trees, a dozen silver claws in hybrid forms. Claws gleaming, eyes aglow with feral hunger. Darius led them, his silver mane flowing like a banner, a smirk twisting his lupine features. "Blackwood, the scarred one is ours. Her blood can shatter curses, yours and the old pacts that bind us all. Surrender her, and we'll spare your crumbling manor." Thorn stepped forward, his body coiling with power, partial shift rippling fur along his arms, claws extending. "She's no tool for your ambitions, Darius. The bond is sealed. Her power is ours to wield." Elara's heart raced, the suspense peaking. Shatter curses? Her lineage held more secrets than the ledger revealed, perhaps a key to ancient magics. She felt it now, a surge building inside, responding to the threat. The battle erupted. Silver claws charged, clashing against the wards in bursts of sparks. Thorn moved like a tempest, his arrows finding marks, his claws rending flesh. Elara stayed at his side, swinging the staff with surprising instinct, the crystal glowing as it repelled attackers, sending shocks through their forms. The bond linked them seamlessly. She anticipated his moves, he shielded her weak spots, but the numbers overwhelmed. A brute shifter broke through, lunging at Elara. Panic flared, but so did the awakening, a heat exploding in her veins. Her vision sharpened, strength flooding her limbs. She dodged with a natural grace, her staff cracking against the attacker's skull. Fur prickled on her arms, brief but telling, her shift teasing at the edges. "Elara!" Thorn roared, dispatching to Ephos to reach her. Blood streaked his armor, but his eyes held pride. You're shifting control it. Darius laughed from the fray, circling them. See, her power awakens for the strong. Join us, girl, break his curse and forge a new era under Silverclaw rule. The taunt ignited Thorn's rage. The curse stirred, his form swelling, dark veins pulsing, the monster emerging. He bellowed, a sound that shook the trees, charging Darius in a blur of fury. Claws clashed, the alphas, trading blows that cratered the earth. Ilara fought off another assailant, her body trembling with the awakening's pull. Emotions surged, love for Thorn, fear of loss fueling the change. Nails lengthened to claws, eyes tingling with gold flecks. But she held back, anchoring herself to the bond, using it to aid Thorn. In a pivotal clash, Thorn pinned Darius, but the rival alpha whispered something, words lost to the chaos that made Thorn hesitate. The curse's origin. Her blood reveals it all. Suspense gripped Ilara. What truth did Darius hold? She rushed forward, staff blazing, striking Darius's side. The alpha yelped, retreating with his remaining pack. This isn't over. The moon will force the truth. As the silver claws fled into the night, Thorn collapsed to his knees, the monstrous form receding, exhaustion claiming him. Ilara knelt beside him, her hands on his face, the bond soothing his pain. What did he say? Thorn's eyes met hers, shadowed with new secrets. Something about the curse's source, tied to your lineage. We need answers from the elders, perhaps. Ilara nodded, helping him stand. Their victory was hard won, but temporary. The bond, now a beacon of love, revealed, promised strength, yet the final challenge loomed, uncovering the full truth of her power and his curse, before the Silverclaws struck again. As they retreated inside, whispers of fate swirled, leading to a reckoning under the next moon. The manor's great hall was a fortress of silence in the aftermath of the Silverclaws' assault, its stone walls bearing fresh scars from the battle-charred runes, splintered wood, and the faint tang of blood lingering in the air. Ilara sat cross-legged on a bearskin rug before the hearth, the fire's glow casting warmth across her face, though it couldn't touch the chill of uncertainty within. Thorn knelt nearby, cleaning his dagger with a cloth, his movements methodical but his eyes heavy with unspoken thoughts. The bond between them thrummed like a heartbeat, stronger than ever after their shared victory. Yet laced with suspense, Darius's cryptic words about the curse's source and her bloodline hung like a storm cloud, threatening to unravel their fragile peace. Ilara's fingers traced the faint fur that had sprouted briefly during the fight, now gone, leaving her skin tingling with the promise of her awakening. The bond had anchored her, kept the shift at bay, but the power within felt like a caged beast, restless and unknown. She glanced at Thorn, his profile sharp in the firelight, the scar on his jaw a reminder of his own battles with the curse. Their love, confessed under the stars, bound them irrevocably, but the secret still veiled in his guarded gaze stirred her unease. You're quiet, she said softly, breaking the silence. What did Darius mean about my blood and the curse? There's more you're not saying. Thorn's hand stilled on the dagger, his shoulders tensing. He set the blade aside and moved to sit beside her, close enough that their knees brushed, the contact sparking warmth through the bond. He's playing games, Ilara, sowing doubt. But there's truth in his taunts. Your Blackwood lineage, it's not just a connection to my pack. The elders' records hint at a prophecy. A latent omega, born of exiled blood, could unbind ancient curses. I didn't believe it until you. Her breath caught, the weight of his words sinking in. Unbind? You mean I could free you from the monster? His blue eyes met hers, raw with hope and fear. Maybe, but it's dangerous. The ritual to break a curse like mine requires blood magic, and it could awaken your shift fully uncontrolled, like mine once was. He reached for her hand, his thumb stroking her scarred knuckles. I'd rather live chained forever than risk you. The vulnerability in his voice deepened their emotional connection, a slow burn of trust and love weaving tighter. Ilara leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. You've carried this alone too long, she murmured. Let me share the burden. If my blood holds answers, we'll find them together. Thorn's arm encircled her, pulling her closer until she nestled against his chest. The fire crackled, mirroring the spark of their bond of flame that warmed the cold corners of her soul. You've already changed me, he whispered, his lips brushing her hair. Before you, I was surviving. Now, I'm living for us. The intimacy of the moment, their bodies entwined in quiet solace, was a testament to their journey from strangers bound by fate to lovers united by choice. Yet suspense lingered, a shadow at the edge of their warmth. What would the ritual demand? And what truths about her lineage would surface? As if sensing her thoughts, Thorn shifted, guiding her to stand. The Elder's sanctuary is a day's journey, hidden deep in the mountains. We'll go at first light. They'll know more about the prophecy, the curse's origin. But tonight, he cupped her face, his gaze intense. Tonight, we rest. Together, they moved to his chamber, a vast room dominated by a canopied bed draped in furs. Moonlight streamed through the windows, bathing the space in silver, amplifying the bond's pull. Elara hesitated at the threshold, her heart racing not from fear, but anticipation. Thorn sensed it, pausing to give her space. No pressure, Elara. The bond doesn't demand this. She stepped forward, closing the distance, her hands finding his chest. I want this. You, not because of fate, but because I choose you. Her fingers traced the lines of his bandages, then higher, to the scar on his jaw. The touch was electric, sealing their commitment further. Thorn's hands slid to her waist, gentle but possessive, and he kissed her slow, deep, pouring every unspoken promise into it. The bond flared, emotions cascading, love, trust, a shared hunger for belonging. They sank onto the bed, clothes shed like old fears, their touches reverent, healing. Each caress, each whispered word, wove their souls tighter, a slow crescendo of intimacy that transcended the physical. In the quiet moments after, wrapped in furs, they lay entwined, the bond a cocoon against the world. But dawn brought reality's bite. As they dressed Elara in borrowed leathers, Thorn in his rune-etched armor, a low howl echoed from the woods, chillingly close. Thorn's eyes narrowed, scanning the horizon from the window. Silver claws. They're tracking us, waiting for weakness. Elara gripped the staff he'd given her, the crystal humming faintly. Let them come. I'm not the scared girl from the auction anymore. He smiled, pride flickering in his gaze. My fear's Omega. But his expression sobered. The sanctuary's wards will protect us, but the journey's treacherous. And the ritual. If it confirms the prophecy, it could draw every pack in the region. Suspense tightened her chest. Her power, her blood, what role did it play in this ancient feud? As they packed supplies, herbs, maps, a vial for blood rites, Elara felt the awakening stir again, a primal pulse synced with the moon's waxing. Her nails sharpened briefly, then receded, a tease of what awaited. They set out, the forest dense and watchful, its silence heavy with threat. Thorn led, his senses alert, guiding her through hidden paths where moss muffled their steps. Conversation flowed, easing the tension, stories of their scars, dreams of a future unbound by curses. A cabin by a lake, Elara mused, stepping over a route he pointed out. Books quiet, you teaching me to hunt. Thorn chuckled, his hand brushing hers. I'd teach you to track under moonlight. We'd run, not as predator and prey, but as equals. The vision warmed her, but a snap in the underbrush halted them. Thorn's claws extended, his body shielding hers. Shadows moved, 3 silver-claw scouts, eyes glinting. The elders won't save you, one snarled. Her blood belongs to us. Thorn's growl was lethal, but Elara stepped forward, staff glowing. I belong to no one. The bond surged, her instincts flaring. She swung, the crystal amplifying her strike, sending a scout sprawling. Thorn dispatched the others, but not before a claw grazed her arm, drawing blood. As they bound the wound, Thorn's touch was tender, his eyes tormented. Your blood, it's key. Darius knows more than he said. Elara nodded, the suspense building. The sanctuary held answers, but the Silver Claw's pursuit promised a final reckoning. As they pressed on, the bond their strength, the mountains loomed, harboring truths that could free them or doom them. The mountain trail wound upward through the whispering woods, its rocky path shrouded in mist that clung to Elara's borrowed leathers like a second skin. Each step toward the Elder's sanctuary deepened the ache of her awakening, a primal pulse that thrummed in time with the bond linking her to Thorn. His broad frame led the way, moving with predatory grace despite the weight of their packs and the fresh scar on her arm, now bandaged but still stinging from the Silver Claw Scout's claw. The forest was silent, too silent, as if holding its breath for the reckoning ahead. Darius's words haunted her, her blood tied to the curse's origin, a key to shattering ancient pacts. But what did it mean, and why did the bond feel like both salvation and danger? Thorn glanced back, his blue eyes catching hers in the dim light of dawn, their gold flecks glinting with concern. You're quiet, he noted, slowing to match her pace. His hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch that sent warmth spiraling through the bond, grounding her amidst the suspense. Alara managed a small smile, though her thoughts churned. Just wondering what we're walking into. The elders. The prophecy. What if my blood changes everything, and not for the better? He stopped, turning to face her fully, his hands settling on her shoulders. The contact was electric, deepening their emotional connection, a slow burn that had grown from tentative trust to unshakable love. Whatever the elders reveal, we face it together, he said, his voice a low rumble that resonated in her chest. You're my mate, Alara. Prophecy or not, that's my truth. Her heart swelled, the bond pulsing with shared strength. She reached up, her scarred fingers tracing the line of his jaw, lingering on the scar that mirrored her own battles. And you're mine, she whispered, the words of vow. Their lips met in a brief, fervent kiss, sealing their commitment under the watchful canopy of ancient pines. The moment was a quiet oasis, but the suspense lingered. What secrets would the sanctuary unveil? They pressed on, the trail steepening as the forest gave way to jagged cliffs. Thorn pointed out hidden runes carved into stones, wards older than the manor, pulsing with magic that made Alara's skin tingle. The sanctuary's protected, he explained, his voice low. No pack can breach it without invitation. But the elders, they're unpredictable. They'll test us. Test how? She asked, gripping her staff tighter, the crystal humming faintly in response to her touch. Thorn's expression darkened. They'll probe the bond, your blood. They may demand a price for answers, a ritual, a sacrifice. My curse. It's a shadow they'll sense. He hesitated, vulnerability cracking his alpha facade. If they push for a full shift, I can't hide the monster. Not from them, maybe not from you. The admission deepened their intimacy, his fear mirroring hers. She squeezed his hand, the bond a lifeline. I've seen your monster, Thorn. It didn't scare me away. Nothing will. His eyes softened, and he pulled her close, their foreheads touching in a shared breath. You're braver than any alpha I've known, he murmured, his lips brushing her temple. The emotional build-up crested, a wave of trust and love that fortified them for the trials ahead. As midday sun pierced the mist, the sanctuary emerged, a cave mouth hidden behind a waterfall, its roar masking their approach. Thorn spoke ancient words, and the wards parted, allowing entry. Inside, the air was cool, scented with moss and incense. 3 figures awaited, cloaked in robes of midnight blue, their eyes glowing faintly. Elders. Ancient shifters whose presence carried the weight of centuries. Thorn Blackwood, the central elder, intoned, her voice like rustling leaves. And the latent Omega. The bond radiates from you, strong but untested. Why seek us? Thorn stepped forward, his arm brushing Alara's protectively. Her bloodline ties to the Blackwood curse. The Silver Claws claim it can break ancient pacts. We need truth. The vulnerability in his voice deepened their emotional connection, a slow burn of trust and love weaving tighter. Alara leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. You've carried this alone too long, she murmured. Let me share the burden. If my blood holds answers, we'll find them together. Thorn's arm encircled her, pulling her closer until she nestled against his chest. The fire crackled, mirroring the spark of their bond, a flame that warmed the cold corners of her soul. You've already changed me, he whispered, his lips brushing her hair. Before you, I was surviving. Now, I'm living for us. The intimacy of the moment, their bodies entwined in quiet solace, was a testament to their journey from strangers bound by fate to lovers united by choice. Yet suspense lingered, a shadow at the edge of their warmth. What would the ritual demand? And what truths about her lineage would surface? As if sensing her thoughts, Thorn shifted, guiding her to stand. The Elder's sanctuary is a day's journey, hidden deep in the mountains. We'll go at first light. They'll know more about the prophecy, the curse's origin. But tonight, he cupped her face, his gaze intense. Tonight, we rest. Together, they moved to his chamber, a vast room dominated by a canopied bed draped in furs. Moonlight streamed through the windows, bathing the space in silver, amplifying the bond's pull. Alara hesitated at the threshold, her heart racing not from fear, but anticipation. Thorn sensed it, pausing to give her space. No pressure, Alara. The bond doesn't demand this. She stepped forward, closing the distance, her hands finding his chest. I want this. You. Not because of fate, but because I choose you. Her fingers traced the lines of his bandages, then higher, to the scar on his jaw. The touch was electric, sealing their commitment further. Thorn's hand slid to her waist, gentle but possessive, and he kissed her slow, deep, pouring every unspoken promise into it. The bond flared, emotions cascading, love, trust, a shared hunger for belonging. They sank onto the bed, clothes shed like old fears, their touches reverent, healing. Each caress, each whispered word, wove their souls tighter, a slow crescendo of intimacy that transcended the physical. In the quiet moments after, wrapped in furs, they lay entwined, the bond a cocoon against the world. But dawn brought reality's bite. As they dressed Alara in borrowed leathers, Thorn in his rune-etched armor, a low howl echoed from the woods, chillingly close. Thorn's eyes narrowed, scanning the horizon from the window. Silver claws. They're tracking us, waiting for weakness. Alara gripped the staff he'd given her, the crystal humming faintly. Let them come. I'm not the scared girl from the auction anymore. He smiled, pride flickering in his gaze. My fierce Omega. But his expression sobered. The sanctuary's wards will protect us, but the journey's treacherous. And the ritual. If it confirms the prophecy, it could draw every pack in the region. Suspense tightened her chest. Her power, her blood, what role did it play in this ancient feud? As they packed supplies, herbs, maps, a vial for blood rites, Alara felt the awakening stir again, a primal pulse synced with the moon's waxing. Her nails sharpened briefly, then receded, a tease of what awaited. They set out, the forest dense and watchful, its silence heavy with threat. Thorn led, his senses alert, guiding her through hidden paths where moss muffled their steps. Conversation flowed, easing the tension, stories of their scars, dreams of a future unbound by curses. A cabin by a lake, Alara mused, stepping over a route he pointed out. Books quiet, you teaching me to hunt. Thorn chuckled, his hand brushing hers. I'd teach you to track under moonlight. We'd run, not as predator and prey, but as equals. The vision warmed her, but a snap in the underbrush halted them. Thorn's claws extended, his body shielding hers. Shadows moved, 3 silver-claw scouts, eyes glinting. The elders won't save you, one snarled. Her blood belongs to us. Thorn's growl was lethal, but Alara stepped forward, staff glowing. I belong to no one. The bond surged, her instincts flaring. She swung, the crystal amplifying her strike, sending a scout sprawling. Thorn dispatched the others, but not before a claw grazed her arm, drawing blood. As they bound the wound, Thorn's touch was tender, his eyes tormented. Your blood, it's key. Darius knows more than he said. Alara nodded, the suspense building. The sanctuary held answers, but the Silver Claw's pursuit promised a final reckoning. As they pressed on, the bond their strength, the mountains loomed, harboring truths that could free them or doom them. The mountain trail wound upward through the whispering woods, its rocky path shrouded in mist that clung to Alara's borrowed leathers like a second skin. Each step toward the Elder's sanctuary deepened the ache of her awakening, a primal pulse that thrummed in time with the bond linking her to Thorn. His broad frame led the way, moving with predatory grace despite the weight of their packs and the fresh scar on her arm, now bandaged but still stinging from the Silver Claw Scout's claw. The forest was silent, too silent, as if holding its breath for the reckoning ahead. Darius's words haunted her, her blood tied to the curse's origin, a key to shattering ancient pacts. But what did it mean, and why did the bond feel like both salvation and danger? Thorn glanced back, his blue eyes catching hers in the dim light of dawn, their gold flecks glinting with concern. You're quiet, he noted, slowing to match her pace. His hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch that sent warmth spiraling through the bond, grounding her amidst the suspense. Alara managed a small smile, though her thoughts churned. Just wondering what we're walking into. The elders. The prophecy. What if my blood changes everything, and not for the better? He stopped, turning to face her fully, his hands settling on her shoulders. The contact was electric, deepening their emotional connection, a slow burn that had grown from tentative trust to unshakable love. Whatever the elders reveal, we face it together, he said, his voice a low rumble that resonated in her chest. You're my mate, Alara. Prophecy or not, that's my truth. Her heart swelled, the bond pulsing with shared strength. She reached up, her scarred fingers tracing the line of his jaw, lingering on the scar that mirrored her own battles. And you're mine, she whispered, the words of vow. Their lips met in a brief, fervent kiss, sealing their commitment under the watchful canopy of ancient pines. The moment was a quiet oasis, but the suspense lingered. What secrets would the sanctuary unveil? They pressed on, the trail steepening as the forest gave way to jagged cliffs. Thorn pointed out hidden runes carved into stones, wards older than the manor, pulsing with magic that made Elara's skin tingle. The sanctuary's protected, he explained, his voice low. No pact can breach it without invitation. But the elders, they're unpredictable. They'll test us. Test how? She asked, gripping her staff tighter, the crystal humming faintly in response to her touch. Thorn's expression darkened. They'll probe the bond, your blood. They may demand a price for answers, a ritual, a sacrifice. My curse. It's a shadow they'll sense. He hesitated, vulnerability cracking his alpha facade. If they push for a full shift, I can't hide the monster. Not from them, maybe not from you. The admission deepened their intimacy, his fear mirroring hers. She squeezed his hand, the bond a lifeline. I've seen your monster, Thorn. It didn't scare me away. Nothing will. His eyes softened, and he pulled her close, their foreheads touching in a shared breath. You're braver than any alpha I've known, he murmured, his lips brushing her temple. The emotional build-up crested, a wave of trust and love that fortified them for the trials ahead. As midday sun pierced the mist, the sanctuary emerged, a cave mouth hidden behind a waterfall, its roar masking their approach. Thorn spoke ancient words, and the wards parted, allowing entry. Inside, the air was cool, scented with moss and incense. 3 figures awaited, cloaked in robes of midnight blue, their eyes glowing faintly. Elders. Ancient shifters whose presence carried the weight of centuries. Thorn Blackwood, the central elder, intoned, her voice like rustling leaves. And the latent Omega. The bond radiates from you, strong but untested. Why seek us? Thorn stepped forward, his arm brushing Elara's protectively. Her bloodline ties to the Blackwood curse. The Silverclaws claim it can break ancient pacts. We need truth. The elder's gaze shifted to Elara, piercing. Your blood sings of exile and power. Step forward, child, Elara bade, the bond steadying her as she approached a stone altar etched with lunar symbols. The elder pricked her finger, letting a drop fall into a silver bowl. The liquid glowed, swirling into visions, her great-grandmother fleeing with her human lover, a witch's curse binding the Blackwoods, and a prophecy, a latent Omega's blood could unravel the spell. But at a cost, the curse was born of betrayal, the elder said. A Blackwood alpha wronged a witch, tying their line to monstrous rage. Your blood, Elara, carries her lineage, a bridge to break or bind. But the ritual demands both your essences, fully awakened. If you shift, you risk becoming like him, untamed. Suspense tightened Elara's chest. Her awakening, so close, could mirror Thorn's curse. She glanced at him, seeing his fear for her safety. What's the cost? She asked. Pain, another elder replied. And choice. Break the curse, and the bond may consume you both, merging your fates irrevocably. Refuse, and the Silverclaws will hunt you for your power, Thorn growled, stepping beside her. I won't let her suffer for me. Elara's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. It's our choice, Thorn. I